Talking Truth to Power, Arenas and Nevada's Freedom Talk Radio. I'm your host, Brendan Trainer, my co-host, Leland Faegre. And because
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, yes. Because of the, holidays, we haven't been on for a while. We've had to miss a couple of beats, so there's quite a bit to talk about. But even the events of the last few days are kind of overwhelming.
Never mind last night, huh?
Yeah, exactly. So we're still trying to process everything that's gone on, including the president's briefing this morning.
So Brendan wrote a book overnight, and he brought it in. And I'm going to have to put on some Ben Gay later because it's so heavy, I pulled a muscle.
I had 2 weeks to write notes, and believe me, I wrote them.
You wrote them all right.
Anyway, the situation in Iran is definitely on the front burners.
We have a situation in Iran?
Yeah, we do.
Oh, okay.
We had a standoff between the president and the Ayatollah Khomeini over the murdering or the assassination, and I'm going to call it that. I don't care what you say. The assassination of General Qasem Soleimani, and also the head of the Shia militias, Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis. And this blow was struck last week, and it turned off a cycle of events. Once again, like over the initial Korean crisis with Kim a couple of years ago, we didn't know whether World War III was going to break out over the last few days.
He set something in motion, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
A sequence of events.
And, one thing is, even though I loved watching Fox News during the whole impeachment debacle, all these guys were right on target. They completely dissected the Democrats' futile attempt to impeach Trump.
Eviscerated them.
Eviscerated them, yes. But, once again, because this was about Iran, which is an obsession with the neocons, I had a hard time watching Fox over the last couple of days. I really did. I found myself actually watching MSNBC more often than Fox.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. I don't know how you do that.
I know. Well, it was only about this one issue, really. And,
well, that's all they ever talk about is over the last 72 hours is this one issue.
Right. I mean...
Chuck Todd and...
Oh, yeah, all of them.
Brian Williams.
Oh, well, those guys I don't care about. No,
Well, the rest of them, it's like they pulled them off the street. Hey, you want to be on the air?
Yeah.
Don't you think? It looks like that.
Yeah.
Where'd they come from?
They had all kinds of experts I hadn't seen before on that station.
Expert in quotes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if any of these guys on either side of the aisle is an expert on what's going on in Iran, because I heard so many blatant falsehoods over the last few days coming from both sides. First of all, I'd just like to say that General Qasem Soleimani, he was this, the words they used to slander this guy, he was an evil man. He was a terrible, awful human being. He's, actually, he sounds like he's worse than Richard Epstein. He plotted 9/11. That's the vice president said that. He bombed the Beirut barracks. I mean, they're dredging up 1982 against this guy. He trained the Romans who killed Jesus.
Did he?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, of course. He was there. He even gave Cain the rock with which he killed Abel. You know?
Well, see, I consider myself a pretty informed person. I didn't know that.
And then we still don't know the details. Maybe more details will come out in the briefings that are going to go on today in the Congress. But there's one thing we have to know about the definition of imminent. Because the definition of imminent is not what you read in the dictionary.
There's a certain variable to that, isn't there?
There isn't. Yes, there is.
Uh-huh.
And it's called the Bethlehem Doctrine, after Daniel Bethlehem, who was an advisor to Netanyahu and England in international law.
It could be a Benjamin Doctrine.
Yes, it could be. But what he said, is unofficial, although it's hard to find, although there are abstracts about it because it's kind of hidden in the British bureaucracy. And I'm getting this from Craig Murray, former ambassador, UK ambassador and commentator now.
Oh, he's very good.
Yes. And even if you know no details about what's going to about the imminent attack, when it might occur, even if it will occur. So the doctrine was specifically developed to justify strikes because of intelligence, that the actor is engaged in a plot when that intelligence neither says what the plot is nor when it might occur. And because you have intelligence that you engaged in a plot before this plot, it's reasonable to kill you in case you do so again.
So the chronological duration is part of this
right.
definition.
There is no chronological
There's an exigent
duration.
definition of what the word means, basically.
Yes, imminent.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is, extremely, I would say, Talmudic, and maybe we'll get into that later, but this is an extremely flexible definition of the word imminent. And
We'll
unless
have to call in security if we start to go down that road.
Well, that's another thing. There is a Jewish fatwa on anybody that any goy who studies the Talmud in order to be critical of the Jews, in order to vex the Jews. Yeah. There's a death warrant out on any goy that does that.
That's an authoritarian vexation if I ever heard one.
Well, the Talmud is supposed to be secret. It's supposed to be esoteric knowledge, but you can download it on the internet and read it if you'd like, or read numerous commentaries.
Do the elders of Zion know about this?
Yeah. You don't have to talk about the protocols of the elders of Zion anymore because it's all out in the open. The only thing is
it's on the internet, isn't it?
We can't talk about it. It's right there in front of us, but we can't mention it. So I hope we can get into that a little bit. But getting back to what happened over the weekend, the lies and the misinformation keeps coming out, but luckily, no American was killed in this first retaliation. But as everybody is saying, this is not the end of it. The ultimate goal is to get America to leave the Middle East, and that would be a good thing.
Oh, absolutely. It's got to be job one, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. And I think Trump will use it at some point.
I hope so, yes.
It's your worldwide invite to Barbecue, the Butcher's Kitchen. Want to expand your advertising dollar? Sponsor this or any America Matters program by calling 775-827-8900, extension 2. Now back to the show.
Hey, welcome back to Talking Truth to Power, Nevada's Freedom Talk Radio. I'm your host, Brendan Traynor, and Leland Faegre is joining me once again after coming down from Lake Tahoe. You had an incident.
Oh, what a beautiful drive this morning. Oh, yeah. We don't have enough time to get into that, but I never saw as much law enforcement in one place as what I just saw on my way up to the show this morning.
Yeah,
oh, my gosh.
Okay, well, maybe we'll hear about it in the news.
Oh, I'm sure you will, yeah.
All right. I just want to clear up a couple of things about these two men, Soleimani and Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis. Christians in Lebanon and Syria offered mass, bereavement masses for Soleimani because they consider that he saved them from ISIS. And al-Muhandi, remember the Zahidis, that other strange religion? There's so many of them over there in that part of the world. The Zahidis that were attacked by ISIS, and some of them were trapped on their sacred mountain. And
then they blew up the side of the mountain.
Yeah,
I remember that.
Yeah, they credit al-Muhandis with rescuing them. They think he was the force that took them to safety. So, and then the idea that they keep saying that he killed 500 or 600, that it keeps changing the number of people that he killed, supposedly, because Iran supplied the Iraqis with the IEDs that, on the roadside.
Yeah. The technology.
Right.
If that's what you want to call it.
Yeah. So, for one, these IEDs were an asymmetrical warfare against a technologically advanced foe.
In a place where we shouldn't have been.
Right. Invading and occupying their land. Mm-hmm. And so you can't go around with one breath saying that the invasion of Iraq was a mistake, although it was more than a mistake. It was immoral and illegal.
I say all those things all the time.
Yeah. And then blame the Iraqis for finding new ways to fight back. You know, it kind of reminds me about the Mel Gibson movie, The Patriot, when General Cornwallis was complaining about the tactics that the Americans used, like killing officers.
That was a long time ago. I don't remember it. But anyways, continue with that thought.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, that's what the British complained about us when the British were the empire and we were the patriots fighting them. And now we're the empire.
War is hell.
Yeah, so now we have to complain about tactics that are used against the empire. But
and to add to the suggestion that we should not have been in the region at all.
Right.
You know, these were volunteers.
Yes. They were.
There was no conscription here.
Right.
So you have to factor that into the algorithm of what we're actually talking about.
Exactly. And so, you know, so that's, you know, that turns me off about the commentary coming from the neocons and the right, especially.
As ugly as the effect of that technology.
Oh, yeah, sure. I mean, we all feel for the American soldiers that had, you know, their legs blown off and their, you know, brains damaged and everything else that happened, but again,
loss of sight. That's the one that, you know.
Loss of sight.
You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's horrible. But the fact is that it's war, and we should not have been over there.
Well, the rest of those neocons were saying it was going to be a picnic.
Oh yeah, it was be a
Tom Friedman, and you know, they're going to welcome us with
flowers.
Yeah,
they're going to spread flowers in front of us.
I mean,
oh gosh. So anyway. And, you know, we're talking a bit about Hezbollah. This Hezbollah in Iraq is not really connected to the Hezbollah in Lebanon. But Hezbollah in Lebanon in 2006 proved that weak countries can survive and win over aggression by wealthier, more technically advanced countries when they defeated the Israeli, the IDF, Israeli Defense Forces. And the tactic is the same. Western power is always air power.
Yeah.
So the first thing you do is so the first thing you do is hunker in against the airstrikes. And if we ever did attack Iran, they have mountains and caves and everything else where they have their air force, which is not as big as ours, but their air force and their missiles. They're all protected. They're all in hardened areas. And then they hunker down against that, and then they counterattack when that is over. And then there'll probably be another wave, so you have to hunker down again. And then if they counterattack again, and then the stronger country is going to get frustrated, and they're going to realize they have to send in ground troops, and then it's game over because you can defeat them using fourth-generation warfare, guerrilla warfare.
Right, guerrilla warfare always is going to be superior in a situation like that.
Right. So no matter how much we brag about having the world's biggest military, it doesn't really matter, and when you're dealing with this type of warfare. And that's what, you know, I think, you know, people are saying, you know, the neocons are saying that we're in the driver's seat. I don't think so. I think Iran is really in the driver's seat now because they can decide what they're going to do next. Or they may not even have to decide. It may be out of their hands. You know, Moqtada del Sadra, who fought the occupation to a standstill around from 2004 to 2006, he's remobilizing his forces, the Mahdi Army, he calls it. And they want us out of Iraq. And if we don't leave Iraq, then they're down the road in 6 months or whatever, there could be more violence, and it won't be coming directly from Iran. It'll be coming from Iraqi nationalists like Sadra.
Yeah, the implications or the possibilities here are quite extravagant. It's pretty clear to me that we're in the driver's seat in this situation for the time being.
Okay.
You know, this guy wrote The Art of the Deal.
Mm-hmm.
He knows how to negotiate, and that's one of his extraordinary strengths. And I believe that ultimately he will prevail in this situation. We might be very, very surprised at how well this turns out for us.
Well, you know, that's another thing.
And you know,
but what do you mean by prevail? Do you really think that Iran is going to come to the table and surrender?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I do. No. I think it's I wouldn't use the word imminent based upon the exigent definition of the term. But I think that Soleimani was there on a peace mission. That's what I think.
Are you being...
Yeah, I'm being facetious.
No, that's what they say he was.
Yeah.
But, you know, they're scratching their head. Why was he there? Well, one thing he was there for was the funeral. for the mobilization people that were killed in the American airstrike. About 30 of them were killed.
But apparently he had carte blanche in that country. He went everywhere he wanted with the security team and everything. I mean, he had, he was protected.
And he, he had the diplomatic, he had the invitation of the Iraqi president, and the Iraqi president, tried to stop the assassination twice, according to news reports, and he was ignored. And, I just have to disagree with you. I don't think Iran is going to come to the table
it's easily,
about this.
It's easily discredited, but we've bet against Trump for way too long, and he always prevails.
I doubt that. I mean,
All right.
Look at Korea.
He keeps
saying that
there's still no failure there.
Well, yeah, but there's no success either. He keeps saying that Kim is promised to denuclearize Korea, and that's an outright lie.
Right. Well, no, I wouldn't call it a lie. I think it's a preference and it's a hope, but it hasn't happened yet. Yeah.
No, it's not a preference. He never said that.
Oh, who are you talking about?
Bolton claims he said it.
Oh, Bolton. Yeah, okay. Well, again, you factor some of these people into the conversation and everything, the whole thing blows up.
Yeah, but Trump is expounding that version of it. Kim is not going to give up his nuclear weapons. No way, no how, unless we end the Korean War and have a treaty, and unless we end the sanctions.
Yeah, I just don't think you can underestimate this guy.
Right.
Trump is amazing. Just absolutely incredible.
And, I can see that this shock and awe did change the paradigm somewhat, but I don't think it's changed it completely. Now, yes, Iran could have done more damage. They avoided...
Talking about last night?
Yeah, last night. Yeah. They avoided killing anybody.
Oh, yeah, it was deliberate. It was just an orchestrated charade of an attack.
It was a honor blow.
Apparently
they didn't use their best missiles.
And I guess a third of them didn't even deploy properly.
Yeah.
But
they used the old Scud missiles that from the 60s or 70s that liquid fueled, that they weren't solid fueled.
And apparently there were some back channel discussions as well.
They notified Tehran an hour before, and so Tehran notified everybody.
You mean Baghdad?
Baghdad,
yeah.
Tehran, notified Baghdad, and they notified everybody. And actually, they went through the Swiss. You see, we don't have diplomatic
channels. I thought they went through Finland.
It could be.
Yeah,
I hear it's the Swiss, but we don't have any real diplomatic channels with Iran anymore because of pulling out from the deal. So we have to use these intermediaries, and that's what they were saying, that Qatar and Switzerland have been doing the heavy lifting for trying to get the two sides to talk.
And the orchestration of the event was quite amazing. We weren't fully aware of it in real time, but as it turns out, the Soleimani burial was going on as the missiles took off. They wanted that as backdrop to the fact that they were dropping his body in the ground.
In the ground, and the missiles were going off.
He was in a cardboard box, and the reason it was supportable is because the only thing in the box was apparently a finger with a ring on it.
Oh, yeah. That's a hand, I think,
or a
partial hand, and a finger with
that Hellfire missile.
Left of it.
That Hellfire missile is.
It is.
Lethal.
It is.
That's what I call lethal aid.
Yeah, it is definitely a weapon that is to be reckoned with, and again, it's more than what Iran has. But does Iran really care? What we also did was we unified the country. Now, I think the dissent in Iran has been overblown, both in the so-called Green Rebellion, and then this rebellion. We don't know how much of the dissent and the people arrested and killed by the Iranian government were real Iranians, or how many of them were paid agents from Saudi Arabia or even us,
And there were 30 Americans killed last night. I know this because the Tehran news agency said so.
Propaganda.
Whatever you do, don't go away.
Hi everybody, this is Sharon Oren and I'm here for Coffee with Sharon, the newest, hottest radio.
This is America Matters Media on AM 1180 KCKQ, a Lotus broadcast station, the power of radio since 1967.
Unable to listen to the whole show? A recording of today's program will be available later today. Visit americamatters.us and click on the podcast link. Now, back to the show.
Well, you know...
well, what?
Well, we're back. And this is Brendan Traynor and Leland Faegre
And
again.
we're around the
Talking
world
to
on
Power.
americamatters.us.
Yes, we are. And we're expanding our radio show here. We're getting better technologically. And if you would like to support our efforts, you're welcome to be a sponsor of Talking Truth to Power or of the America Matters radio in general.
You look good in digital, Brendan.
Do I?
Yeah.
Okay. There were quite a... 2019 was the end of the decade, and there was quite a few incidents that happened at the end of 2019, kind of like what happened at the beginning of it, that involve anti-Semitism. And we have the...
Wait just a second. Let me call in security.
Yes.
Before we get down this road here.
And the one of them was the attack on Orthodox Jews in the New York City area. One of them very blatant, breaking into the home and attacking with a machete and wounding. The main victim of the attack may not survive, or if he does, he'll be paralyzed. And we're against violence. Any Christian or Christian thinking person would be against violence, and we are. But then the other things were the executive order issued by the Trump administration that said that that Title VI money could be denied to any college that allows people that express views as if their Jewish students were a nation or a ethnicity, even though they're really not. But if anybody on the campus, and this is aimed specifically, the language doesn't mention, but it's aimed specifically at the BDS movement, right? Mm-hmm. That they could, the universities could be in a lot of trouble. So
I think the money should be withheld anyway.
Yeah, I don't agree with all this money with strings attached to it.
They should be working at Burger King, those people.
Okay. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the First Amendment and the establishment of religion clause. This is the founders, were refugees from the religious wars of Europe, the 30 Years' War and other wars that were going on where different denominations were killing each other. So when they came to America, they believed that all religions, including Muslims, Jews, deists, and non-believers, would be protected in their freedom to worship or not, as they pleased, but no religion in the First Amendment would be granted any privilege or immunities not enjoyed by the other religions, which is the Establishment Clause in a nutshell, right? Mm-hmm. So even though every religion in the early American epoch was allowed free expression, and they called the Catholics, that did not preclude vigorous discussion and what do you call discourse and criticism of religion. Thomas Jefferson, in fact, railed against the Jewish Talmudic tradition.
Yeah, he and Paine pretty much took control of that argument, that discussion.
Right.
And I'm pretty proud of those two.
Yeah.
Paine was the black sheep. Jefferson had a little bit more credibility, I guess.
Yes,
on
as a
subject.
scholar and an attorney and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, but he had nothing good to say about religion generally, and specifically the subject matter you're talking about.
Right. And also the Presbyterians. He had nothing
Oh,
good
yeah.
to say about the Presbyterians.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Well, he mocked them.
Yeah.
You know,
he
that's
did.
what I liked about Jefferson. Is he didn't just disagree or dissent. He actually had fun with it. He mocked them.
Yes, and he wrote a secular New Testament, you know, with
That's right.
Jesus didn't commit many
Right.
miracles, but he was a great teacher and all
Right.
that. So that was but, you know, we're losing that spirit because, you know, we still say that any religion can practice here, but some religions we can't talk about, you know.
Which one in particular?
Well, I have to say that we cannot talk about, and the Overton window, you know what the Overton window is? That's the limit of discussions in political discourse is called the Overton window, and that's the window in which you can discuss certain things. And if you are outside of the Overton window, you're not going to get a hearing, especially
you won't
in the
even-
mainstream media.
You won't even get a paycheck.
Yeah, right. So the fact is that you cannot, frankly, discuss the Jewish religion in any way, shape, or form. There is a valid reason to discuss it. And it's there is, in other words, a valid Jewish question. It doesn't mean that you have to resort to violence. I mean, G.K. Chesterton is a revered Catholic figure. A lot of people think he should be a saint. One of the reasons why he's not a saint was supposedly his anti-Semitic views, which were also held by his friend, the Catholic historian Hilaire Belloc. And they, you know, so even back in the early part of the 20th century, you know, it became politically incorrect to discuss what's going on in the Jewish religion.
Where do you pick up those sainthood papers to fill out? I want to apply. Because some of these people that achieve that status should make way for you and I.
St. John Chrysostom. I don't know if you're not familiar with him. I'm sure, but he was actually the bishop that persecuted the Hellenic scholars and burned their library, and there was a woman scholar that was famously persecuted by him, but he's a saint.
He's a papist.
Yeah, they okay. That's right. I mean, Catholics were regularly called papists, and they were in the minority.
Well,
but
it was a disparaging term.
Yes, exactly.
But I don't think it was, for the most part, in hindsight, inaccurate.
Yeah, okay.
You know, I think most of them were less than decent people. I mean, I think the history of the church reveals that.
Oh, you mean overall?
Yeah,
Not necessarily.
in the hierarchy. No, I don't mean people on the street.
No, or the state of Maryland, or
no,
Charles Carroll of Carrolltown, or any of those people.
No, not those people.
No, but I know. Well, I agree with you.
Did you see the Pope take that woman's arm?
And just shove it away?
Was that the ugliest thing you ever saw? And did you hear how the media protected that guy?
Yeah. He is a piece of work.
Oh, my God. He is disturbing.
I know. It's the first communist Pope.
And you didn't need sound on that. You know, it was just the visual that you need. All you need, ugh,
Yeah.
you know. Get your hands off of me.
Yes. And but but, you know, there is a sociological studies that are legitimate about proportional representation. For example, if a particular religion or ethnic group comprises less than 5% of the population but controls over 50% of the wealth in a country, I mean, that's a legitimate object of sociological analysis. Mm-hmm. And then if they also, if less than 5% of the population is heavily represented on open borders immigration think tanks, far out of proportion to their population, that should also be a question of discussion. And we had that just over the break when we had that with the Stephen Miller, the White House immigration advisor, who was pilloried by his mostly Jewish liberals because he wrote, he's an immigration restrictionist, and that's extremely rare for a Jewish person.
And he never makes personal appearances. He never turns up anywhere.
He has occasionally. He's a very interesting guy.
He is very, But I mean, I think it's because he is sort of a lightning rod for the administration, and they don't need a lot of that. So he probably stays in his office for the most part.
Yes, but the idea is that why are so many Jewish people involved in all kinds of liberal causes in the West? But if you go to Israel, it's the most immigration restrictionist country on the planet, and it's an apartheid state. There's no civil rights for their minorities there, the Palestinians and even the Bedouins and even the black Hebrews, the black Jewish people, the Ethiopian Hebrews get discriminated against, and even the dark-skinned Arab Hebrews, some of the Sephardics get discriminated against. But in America, they're at the forefront of the liberal agenda of
everything.
Everything, virtually everything. Yeah. So why is that? What is the cause that they are so different in the Western countries and what they espouse, and different in their own homeland from what they espouse?
Well, the door is open for them, clearly.
Yes.
And I think once there is an understanding of someone's ethnic origin or bias, however you want to describe that, whatever that algorithm is, the door is open.
Right.
And the ascendancy begins.
Right. Well, when we get back from the break, I want to talk a little bit, continue to talk about this sensitive subject, even though it might be my death sentence.
Well, years ago, I remember the Libertarian Party sent out a questionnaire to us Libertarian candidates. I think, maybe just the rank and file, not necessarily candidates. But they asked of our religious orientation. And I looked on the list, and deist wasn't there. So I sent them an email back.
Yeah.
What the hell? They never got back to me.
Wainema Ranch Wild Horse Sanctuary, a preserve dedicated to keeping America's wild mustang.
Getting to know you.
Let me tell you about America Matters with Eddie Floyd. It comes on every Monday at noon. Don't want you to miss it. That's America Matters with Eddie Floyd.
To join the conversation, call 844-790-TALK. That's 844-790-8255. Now, back to the show.
Hey, welcome back to Talking Truth to Power. I'm your host, Brendan Traynor, my co-host, Leland Faegre, and we're talking a little bit about the First Amendment and how you cannot speak logically or frankly about certain religions, and the main one being the Jewish religion, without being called an anti-Semite and being driven out of the Overton window and into the Netherlands where David Duke resides.
So that's the writer in you.
Yeah,
you got it.
Yeah, so most people are not aware. Most Christians, were brought up in Catholic school or Sunday school to think that Jews are just people that believe in the Old Testament and don't believe that Jesus was the Messiah. And that's really a very simplistic way of looking at it. In fact, very few Jews, there's only one sect with maybe 10,000 members called the Karaite Jews, but very few Jews actually read the Old Testament or consider it their primary book.
To their credit.
Yeah, well, okay.
I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is a pretty gruesome history.
God. It's hideous.
Yes, but, yeah, yeah, like that Jewish comedian said, Yahweh was an a-hole, and that's exactly what he was.
And he was probably Jewish himself, wasn't he?
Well, he was probably originated as another pagan volcano god, and eventually he became the leader of the Hebrew sect. But anyway, the Talmud is actually the main religion. The Talmud and the Kabbalah. Maybe you heard Madonna reads the Kabbalah.
Yeah, she said something about that once,
yes,
didn't she?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I've completely forgot about that.
Yes. So what exactly is the Talmud? Well, when Jesus was alive, if you're a Christian, there was no written Talmud. It was still in 100, in his era, it was still a verbal law of the establishment. The priests in the temple and the Pharisees and the scribes. If you go on Wikipedia, look up the Woes, Jesus' Woes.
How do you spell that?
Woes, the Woes, because he over almost 100 times he said, "Woe to the scribes and Pharisees," and he delineated their hypocrisy. And if you read the New Testament, they're always trying to trap him, like the famous story of the adulteress that they were going to stone, and Jesus picked up a stone and said, "He who is without sin, cast the first stone." And also they gave him a Roman coin and said, "Do you pay taxes to Caesar?" And he said, "Render unto Caesar what Caesar's, render unto God what is God's."
It's damn good.
So they were always trying to trap him and discredit him and so on. And he always managed to refute their logic, their Talmudic logic. And then eventually the Talmud did get written down. It was probably around 1200 A.D. It became the really official law of Judaic religion. And what it is, it's a series of commentaries on the Noahide law, on the many, many rules and regulations that are laid down on the Jews. And these commentaries by the rabbis are considered to be the foremost exposition of the Jewish religion. The problem is that they're awful duplicitous, and when you look at it closely, you realize that the Jewish religion is based on situational ethics. In other words, when Moses came down from Mount Sinai in the Jewish religion with the Ten Commandments, he didn't give them to everybody. According to the Jewish religion, they were only meant for the Hebrews. So, "Thou shalt not kill" does not mean you shall not kill the Amalekites, because they were always killing the Amalekites.
Who has more fun than we do on talking truth to power, huh?
But you absolutely cannot kill another Jew. And the situational part of it is that it's not a crime in the Talmud for a Jewish person to kill a Goy person. Remember, the Jews divide the world into two groups, the Jews and those who aren't.
Yeah.
And those who wish they were Jews.
That's why we have security here at the station.
I know. And, so there are the Jews, and they are the chosen people. They're circumcised, and they obey the Noahide law. They obey all the rules and regulations. It's extremely formalistic. Most of them, it is said, I don't want to impugn, but it is said that most of the rituals that the Jewish people go through, they don't even know why. It's just daily ritual that's supposed to produce these different results.
Well, isn't that true of just about any religion?
Yeah, it could be true of any Christian religion.
Because effectively it's a business.
Yeah.
So you have to have protocols, and that's basically what we're talking about.
Right. But in Christianity, there is the universality. It's almost like the Supreme Court when they said the Ten Commandments applies to the states.
Uh-huh.
Well, the Christian religion said that the Ten Commandments applies to everybody, not just, the Hebrews in this situational ethical discourse. So the only difference is whether you are in a society or country where the Jews are dominant. If you're in a country where the Jews are dominant, then Katie bar the door. You can do whatever you want. That's why in Israel, in Israel, Jews that commit crimes against the Goy are very seldom prosecuted. And if they are, they're given a slap on the wrist. It's only committing a crime against the Jew is prosecuted in Israel. Yeah, I know. And that's why they always want to extradite Jewish people that are charged with crimes, and they'll go to Israel and either get off scot-free or get a slap on the wrist again. And so but in countries that are dominated by the Goyim, then you have to obey those laws because of the keeping the peace, or in other words, in order to present the Jewish people as a tolerant, benevolent people, you cannot do what they can do with impunity in their own homeland.
Somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. So that is the situational ethics that we see described in the Talmud, and so this is very hard to describe. The mainstream media will not pick it up. it's right there in front of us, and yet we can't talk about it. I mean, we all know what Epstein did, and he did it publicly in front of everybody else. There's no Jewish conspiracy here, although he probably did blackmail all these people and give the Mossad the blackmail tapes that they have, according to the mega group and what Whitney Webb has done. But basically, he's right up front, and everybody wonders, how did he get away with this? Because, like Representative Omar said that shocked the Congress, the Jews have hypnotized the world. And it's true, because we don't understand them. We don't understand where they're coming from. Now, in New York City, we have this problem of all these black people that are spontaneously attacking Jewish people. I mean, most of it is low-level violence, like punching somebody in the street, like
spitting
Antifa.
on them.
Yeah. Like Antifa used to do. But we had that one terrible incident where the machete attack in the suburb of New York and up in Westchester. But everybody is saying, everybody just takes it at face value that this is about hate. But there is a Letitia James, a black public advocate for the city of New York, that publishes a list of the 100 worst landlords in New York City. And all of them, or 90 or 95% of them, are Jewish. If I have a copy of the list that she has out here, and the worst landlord with over 1,000 violations is named Jonathan Cohen and Silver Shore Properties. Then we have Raul Isaacs, Thomas Steiner, Bruce Haley, Eric Silverstein, Adam Stryker, Joel Goldstein. The list goes on and on. These are all Orthodox Jewish landlords that if you were not in polite society, you could say were slumlords. Mm-hmm. And the stories...
Well, I think there was a woman way back, probably 15, 20 years ago, that was described as a slumlord, and she was Jewish. I don't remember, what was her name? Do you remember that more...
the owner of, the Cincinnati Royal...
No, she was in New York.
Okay.
I
don't know her name.
Yeah, it's been so long.
The thing I just wanted to say is that nobody is taking these incidents in New York City to be an American version of an Eastern European pogrom. Or did I say it
Pogrom.
right? Pogrom.
Yeah.
Okay, pogrom.
Show prep.
Which is, spontaneous violence against Jews because of their business practices, and their treatment of Christians, because the Jews in Eastern Europe were much more out front about what they thought of Christians, which is not very much. Mm-hmm. The Talmud really, really hates Christians, much more so than Muslims. But the idea that you cannot explore any of this, you cannot. The Anti-Defamation League just put out a list of what constitutes anti-Semitism, and one of the things on the list is criticizing Jewish business practices. You can't do that without being an anti-Semite, and that's just plain wrong, in my opinion.
Yeah,
you should have the ability to speak freely and openly.
Absolutely.
And
I'd like to thank my co-host Brendan Trainer here for bringing this subject to light today, because heaven knows it needs to be discussed, and he's made the best case for getting your children out of public schools that I've heard lately.
Exactly.
Because if they're not explaining this,
right,
it's a worthless experience.
It's not about hate. It's just about talking the truth and being able to recognize the truth and say it openly.
Speaking of truth, that's another episode of Talking Truth to Power.
Yes.
Man, does it go fast?
Yes,
what?
It does.
Well, welcome along our network of America Matters Media, and we'll see you again next week.